Good evening and welcome to Watchmen on the Wall. Thank you for joining us. Tonight we go to Parliament, where I investigate the opening of a pornographic shop right opposite the entrance of Parliament. I speak to ACDP MP Cheryllyn Dudley about the implications of having a pawn shop right opposite Parliament. I also speak to ANC spokesperson in Parliament, Moloto Mothapo, about an adult shop being so close to Parliament. I'm speaking to ACDP MP Cheryllyn Dudley, here outside Parliament in Cape Town, in Plain Street. And behind Cheryllyn is the new adult wool sex shop that the ANC Chief Whip, Mr. Stone Senzani, has been very vocal about. Now, Cheryllyn, as a female MP in Parliament, how do you feel about a pornographic shop being right outside the entrance of Parliament?
Well, I can speak as a female, but I think firstly I speak as a member of Parliament, and it is unfortunate on a number of levels, and the one that comes to mind immediately is just in terms of lowering the tone of Parliament, an institution that should be highly respected in South Africa. It also opens members of Parliament to ridicule, and there is an insinuation already by the media and others that it's there because of a demand from members of Parliament, which is not actually the truth. The fact is, there's churches in the vicinity, there's school children coming in and out of Parliament all the time. It's encouraged as part of their curriculum, so it's inappropriate on many levels. Now, of course, on the plus side, this is probably a very good idea that this has happened again, because this is the second time that the ANC actually have taken offence to the situation, which is great, accepting that they have the power to change the situation. And yeah.
That's my second question I was going to ask you, is that the ANC Chief Whip came out strongly against a sex shop right outside the entrance of Parliament, and as you said, it lowers the tone of an institution like Parliament. But it's ANC policies that's responsible for shops like this to be anywhere it wants to be. Has anybody questioned the ANC about that?
Well, there's two pieces of legislation. The one is, the Films and Publications Act in terms of pornography, and that is an issue, and that can be dealt with. And this is actually great because, in a sense, it helps the very people who need to deal with those kinds of amendments to feel what it is like to be a part of a constituency that cannot do anything about it, because the legislation actually binds, it binds the decisions even of a municipality. The same with the Businesses Act, and that Businesses Act, there is an amendment on the books that is coming to Parliament and should actually be dealt with perhaps in this particular session of Parliament. This will actually put it on those particular members of Parliament, the ANC themselves, as to how it feels to be a disempowered stakeholder in a community where you cannot actually have a say in what businesses open on your streets, and actually bring the negative consequences. And one of the negative consequences that hasn't been spoken about is the fact that this is what happens in inner cities. This kind of business, these kind of businesses kind of proliferate, and then upstanding, decent business decides to move elsewhere, and it leaves the inner city in a state of real disrepair and completely where you don't want your cities to be, because cities are important. They also attract tourism and all of these kind of things. So it has a very negative effect in terms of sending decent, upstanding business outside of the city, the inner city.
Now, what comes to mind, Cheryllyn, is Times Square in New York, where adult shops proliferated, peep show shops, all these kind of things. And again, they use the argument freedom of speech and freedom of this and that. And once more of those businesses opened up in Times Square, the good businesses, as you said, moved away, and it became a slum. Prostitution, drug dealers. Can you imagine if that happened in this street, Plain Street, right opposite the entrance of Parliament, where, as you say, school children are coming in and out to visit Parliament, dignitaries enter here, right up the road, and I don't know if the camera there can point to, right on the corner there is a church, a well-known Catholic church opposite Parliament, and this adult wool shop
down the road, and the Anglican church just down the road.
That's right, and so you've got churches in the close vicinity. There's a school also just behind that church, St. Mary's, I think it is, and yet The city of Cape Town gave them a license to open up here. Has there been any inquiries by Parliament with the city of Cape Town why they allowed or gave a license to Adult World to open right here?
Well, there have been, because we're very conscious that school children are in and out of here all the time, and we encourage schools to bring children here, part of their curriculum. The investigation, though, comes back to the point of the Businesses Act, that the municipalities are actually not given the right to make a decision in terms of what the community and the stakeholders have to say. They have to make the decision on certain criteria, and that's simple criteria like health, if the health they come up to the health expectations and standards, and if the people are reputable business. So of course Adult World could have hundreds of other businesses functioning optimally in other parts, and that would make them successful business people. And so in terms of the criteria that's set in the Act, the city hands are tied to some degree. Our feeling is that the city should actually take authority. They do in other respects, and they should have opened it to the community. However, at the end of the day, it comes back to that Businesses Act, and that Parliament can deal with. And now that Parliament can actually feel what it's like to have the shoe on the other foot, perhaps we're in a better place to do the right thing with that legislation.
Now, all of the research shows that pornographic shops like this, they play a huge role in demeaning and undermining women. The role of women, because it sexually stereotypes women as sex objects. And of course, with the rape and the abuse of women in our country, what it is, there isn't much support, I know, amongst the general public for sex shops of this nature. Has the ANC Women's League come out and said anything about it?
I haven't heard them actually bring up the issue at all. They generally do. They have been in the past. I think at the moment they may not be seeing this as an issue that's at the forefront of what they're dealing with. But I do think that in terms of where they stand on the issue, they would not like to see this being the norm. And yet, as I say, the realization hasn't hit yet that they actually have the power to do something about it.
Cheryllyn Dudley, we want to thank you for speaking to us once again at Watchmen on the Wall. And I just want to congratulate you for coming back for what is this, your third term in Parliament?
Yeah, it is my fourth term. Yeah.
Your fourth term in Parliament. So we're very happy to see you back here, and we wish you a wonderful time in Parliament, and may you advance the kingdom of God as you've been doing the last 3 terms, and we wish you much success.
Thank you, Errol. I very much appreciate that. It's going to be a tough 5 years, and we're just really waiting to see where we can be our most effective, and we're going to give it our all, I promise.
I'm speaking to Mr. Moloto Mothapo, the ANC spokesperson in Parliament. Now, Mr. Moloto, I'm here to talk about Stone Senzani, the ANC Chief Whip's comments about the Adult World shop just opposite the entrance of Parliament in Plain Street. Now, Mr. Senzani was very vocal about the opening of a sex shop right opposite Parliament. Tell us why he was so upset about this kind of business near the proximity of Parliament.
Well, at the view of the African National Congress in this Parliament, which we are the majority, and we are responsible for maintaining its respect, and we are sort of, the custodian of its decorum, as well as the confidence that the people outside should have in it. And we believe that it is at a very inappropriate location because, since 1994, this Parliament has transformed from being an apartheid institution that was not accessible to ordinary people. It was not representative of the broader South African citizens. It was only open to certain races. And since 1994, this Parliament has transformed into a very accessible people's institution, and quite a lot of people are welcome. All people are welcome in this Parliament. Like, for example, on daily basis, you will get people from different backgrounds coming from all over the country. You've got tourists coming, you've got children, school children coming on school projects, visits. You've got students of higher learning, you've got people from various religious backgrounds coming as well to visit the institution. So you don't want a situation whereby on the doorstep of Parliament you've got certain types of business that might offend the moral as well as religious sensibilities or belief systems of certain people, to an extent that it might discourage them from visiting Parliament, because you know, you have to have an environment outside the institution that is welcoming, that does not offend the belief systems as well as moral sensibilities of certain people. So as Parliament, therefore, we cannot claim to be open to all people, whereas we are having on our doorstep certain businesses or certain things that might discourage people from coming to Parliament and make it this truly people's Parliament.
Now, Mr. Moloto, when this news broke in the media, I've seen comments on Facebook and Twitter that said that it is precisely the policies of the ANC that allowed businesses like this to proliferate. And sex shops are now all over the place, near churches, near schools, and it's the ANC, they're saying, is responsible for that. What is your comment on that?
I think the argument here, really, what people are missing is that the democratic dispensation gives people variety of rights. You've got these rights that are entrenched in the Bill of Rights, in the Constitution, and elsewhere in the Constitution. But we need at all times to exercise those rights responsibly. Those rights are not absolute. They have to be exercised with some level of responsibility. For example, yes, indeed, the laws of the country allow such kind of business, but you cannot, they are in conflict with when they open closer to the church, because they're just around the stone's throw from Parliament, at the corner of Parliament, there is a church. Just a stone throw from Parliament, there is a school where children go, and children pass Plain Street, pass this shop on daily basis when they go to school. It is the kind of an eyesore that we do not need. We don't want to expose children. We don't want to expose those who practice their religions, and they've got a right to do so freely under our Constitution, to be offended by such kind of shops. So indeed, there are laws that are governed or that are being exercised, and the South African Film and the Publication Board is responsible for ensuring that such laws are enforced. And indeed, we are hopeful that very soon they will deal with this kind of a shop, because in terms of the laws that they are responsible for, you cannot have this kind of a shop close to the church or close to the school. There is an acceptable radius that they have put for such kind of business. So when while people have got their right to open and to trade on a wide range of businesses, but that right should be exercised with responsibility. It must not offend or be, in this case, close to the institutions such as your primary schools or your churches.
Or even places like Parliament.
Well, I'm not sure whether it is provided under the Film and Publication Board legislation, but what we are saying is a moral issue that we are raising, to say that it is inappropriate to have such kind of a shop operating next to Parliament, because if you say yes to this one, tomorrow you will have a nightclub also opening, you will have a shebeen, you will have all manner of Sodom and Gomorrah just on the vicinity of Parliament. That is the kind of situation that we are trying to avoid, because what it will do then, it is going to, when people think about Parliament, they are going to think about those kind of things, and they are going to be discouraged from visiting Parliament. And we cannot call it a Parliament of the people when people cannot come to it.
Now, Mr. Moloto, is it your opinion that sex shops like Adult World and others demean and degrade women?
Well, I'm not an expert on that, but probably gender activists will be able to deal with this matter. But you know, it is often said that the rights of women are also human rights, and the human rights is provided, are protected under the Bill of Rights in the Constitution. And sometimes women will say that it is their right to do certain things, but the reality is that we don't need a situation that objectifies or views a woman's bodies as objects. That is a line that we need to draw. The issues of sex are issues that they belong to a certain private space. It is not things that belong to the doorstep of Parliament. For example, that's why I'm giving example that while they are arguing that their windows are blocked, their windows are tinted, and the children cannot see anything, but the fact is that it is a common knowledge that it is a shop that deals with 1, 2, 3. And you don't want children to be exposed to such kind of things. And we believe that it is at a very inappropriate vicinity or space within which is very close to Parliament. But when it comes to the issues of the rights of women, obviously we will always say no to any thing that violates the right of a woman, because the rights of women are human rights, and we don't want anything that will treat the bodies of women as objects. But with regard to the link between this shop and the rights of women, we cannot comment on that at the moment.
Okay. Now, Mr. Moloto, is there a plan by the ANC to have that shop closed down or moved from the close proximity to Parliament?
Look, we have sought legal advice from Parliament, and we are hopeful that very soon they will give us a legal opinion with regard to it. And we are hopeful that Parliament will also get in touch or seek an explanation from the City of Cape Town as to how this shop was allowed or given permission to trade so close to Parliament, so close to the church, so close to the school. And the matter as well, we welcome the intervention of the Film and Publication Board, which has expressed its outreach at this kind of shop operating here as well. We are hoping that the combination of all these interventions will actually result in this shop being moved elsewhere. Yeah.
Okay, Mr. Moloto, thank you for talking to us. And perhaps when that shop is finally moved from here, we'll come back to you for a comment.
Yes, no, we'll be ready to comment. I'm sure we will be, all of us will be celebrating.
Okay, thank you. Recently, there's been a media storm about Chief Justice Mogoeng's comments about law and religion. We go to Parliament where I speak to ACDP MP Steve Swart about the growing anti-Christian bias in the liberal media and also the hypocrisy regarding religion and secularism. I'm speaking to ACDP MP Steve Swart here in Parliament, right outside the old Assembly building. And Steve, as an attorney and a member of the Justice Portfolio Committee, I thought it was appropriate to talk to you about the Chief Justice comments recently in which he said that religion could strengthen our laws. there's been, as you know, a huge outcry from the liberal media mainly about those comments, a lot of it distorting what he said. But do you agree with what he said?
Absolutely. We from the ACDP are fully behind the Chief Justice. And you recall, even when he was nominated and he said he was going to pray about whether he should accept this position or not, he was widely criticized and he was given a really robust questioning by the Judicial Services Commission because of his faith and because of his beliefs. We feel very strongly, and as he said, our law is very strongly based on religious beliefs. If you take the common law of England, for example, it is based on the 10 Commandments. If you take our laws, thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not commit murder, it is illegal in terms of our law as well. So there are many aspects of religion that is contained in our law at the moment, and we think it is fundamental and good of the Chief Justice to have expressed those views. He's not saying our law should be based on specific text, but what he is saying is religion underpins the values of our society and the values of our law, and we need to look at that. He's saying we're faced with maladministration, corruption, officials not doing their jobs, and surely there's a place for religion to be factored into our law. So whilst I can't speak officially on behalf of the Justice Committee, we as the ACDP most certainly do support his sentiments as he has expressed.
Now, what do you say to the critics that have said that South Africa is a secular state and that religion has no place in our lawmaking processes?
Well, that is interesting. The Constitutional Court has already said that the religious beliefs of a large majority of South Africans must be taken very seriously. So they are on record as saying that. We've had that same debate here in Parliament, whether South Africa is in fact a secular state or not. I beg to differ. If one looks that you can have religious observances in state institutions, that would mean that we do not have a strict separation of church and state and a strict secular state. There's no clause that says South Africa is a secular state. So there's a lot of dispute about that and different views about that. In the Western Cape, for example, we've got the Western Cape Constitution that says in humble submission to Almighty God, we the people of the Western Cape. That has been accepted by the Constitutional Court. We have the debates here in Parliament often in our Constitutional Review Committee as to whether we are a secular state or not. People saying if we are a secular state, all references to God in the Constitution must be removed. We as the ACDP have fought that and asserted that we are not a secular state, and broad-based across political lines, they've accepted that, and so they have refuted those submissions that say we must remove all references to God in our Constitution.
Now, I made the argument on a radio debate program on SAFM recently that we might have a secular constitution, but more than 80% of South African citizens subscribe to one religion or the other, so, Christianity being the largest. How can we be a secular state if so many people in the country are religious?
Well, absolutely, but it gets down to the text of the Constitution. That is what the liberal people are saying, and that is what is paramount almost. But I agree with you. And if you take a look at a lot of our laws that do reflect the religious values, take, for example, the defense of moderate parental chastisement that exists in our common law at the moment. Yes, again, that is now being attacked, but it exists in terms of our law where parents can moderately chastise their children, can apply moderate discipline. That is permissible in terms of our law. That is based on scriptural references, on religious references, spare the rod and spoil the child. So yes, there is a lot of grounds, and your point is 100% correct, that if there are 80% of South Africans that hold different faiths, different religions, mainly Christian, surely those values should be translated into our society and into our law-making process, and we as the ACDP fully support that.
Now Steve, when I read the speech of the Chief Justice, one of the things that caught my attention was that he was speaking specifically about marriage and family. Institutions, as you know, that are breaking down in our society because the laws that have been passed since 1994 in this institution, Parliament, has not done a lot to protect and defend those institutions. And he was saying behaviors like fornication, yes, adultery, yes, divorce are all things that the law should frown on. Why? Because we want to protect marriage and family. We want to strengthen these institutions. The media came out against him. How can that be wrong to protect marriage and family in a country that is ravaged by the consequences of family breakdown?
Absolutely, and I would fully support you on that. And we as the ACDP have fought for almost 20 years to protect family values, to protect the family, which is the center. Healthy families are healthy communities, healthy societies, and we see it being broken down by secularist, humanist agendas where anything goes. You have relativism. If you don't have absolute values that are often founded on faith and on religions, you have relativism. Anything goes. Therefore, you can have, as we see, a breakdown in our marriages. We can have same-sex marriages. You can have abortion on demand. You can children having contraceptives at the age of 12, abortions without parental guidance. All these things that are an attack on our basic values, on our religious values, and of course as we as our Judeo-Christian values. So we need to take a strong stance. And yes, we've got the support of the population here. We've got 80% of people across religions that stand. I remember when we opposed the same-sex marriage issue, all faiths came out and they said, we are opposed to this. Yes, there were one or two Christian faiths, church members that agreed with it, but they were in the minority. But overwhelmingly, if you remember the Marriage Alliance that came out strongly representing millions of people that said we cannot accept this. So yes, there is support out there. There's support in there, and that needs to be translated into putting pressure on our government and on Parliament to ensure that the laws we pass have that Judeo-Christian basis and are not impacted by secular humanism. And we see even in the media today, over the weekend, Mondi Makanya, who came out supporting the Chief Justice, where he in fact urged us to be careful of anti-religion fundamentalists. Those, he said, those zealots are more dangerous, or more, because they would try to picture us as Christians as for almost a form of backwardness, primitiveness, almost verging on witchcraft, whereas we stand strongly for our faiths that have stood the test of time and that have formed the backbone of our laws. I'm a lawyer, I've studied law. Our common law is strongly impacted by our religious faiths over the years, and that has stood the test of time. And so I commend the Chief Justice, I commend Mondi Makanya of the City Press for coming out in support of the Chief Justice and saying, let us beware of anti-religion fundamentalists that are trying to introduce secular humanism, particularly where the majority of South Africans hold to a religious belief, and that those beliefs should be factored into our lawmaking process. I fully support that.
And what do you say about a news channel in South Africa that interviewed a legal expert and asked him this question: should the Chief Justice, is the Chief Justice at least, fit for high office considering his Christian beliefs? Now, the line of questioning suggests that any South African citizen that is a Christian and has biblical beliefs is not fit for public office. What is your comment on that?
If that was put in Parliament, it would be disallowed. Absolutely. Why should the fact that one is a Christian allow you to stand for high office? I think that is disgraceful. And of course, one needs to bear in mind that the Chief Justice himself went through a rigorous questioning by the Judicial Services Commission. They found him more than able to hold high office. So who is this interviewer to say that once the Judicial Services Commission has gone through the process, has appointed a Chief Justice, found him to be more than fit and able, and Parliament and the President have adhered to that, who is this person to question him for his standing?
Yeah, and I think it's the anti-Christian bias in the media that has been exposed during this whole debate about the Chief Justice and his comments that religion strengthens our lawmaking process in South Africa. But Steve, I want to thank you once again for speaking to us at Watchmen on the Wall. We are very excited and pleased that you're back in Parliament to continue the fight for Christian values, to protect the family and advance the kingdom of God in this important institution.
Thank you, Errol, and thank you for the opportunity. And we just want to commend you for being Watchmen on the Wall. We are Watchmen on the Wall within Parliament. You are Watchmen on the Wall outside Parliament. So let's take hands to further the kingdom here in Parliament and in South Africa. Thank you so much.
But it got to the point where immediately after the president made his preferred candidate for appointment known, that people in the public domain began to, speak as if I was never considered by them as a possible appointee to the position of Chief Justice. You would recall that some of the comments went like, a surprise or a shock nomination of Mogoeng. But the focus was primarily on my Christian belief. What is his attitude going to be about the gay and lesbian community? The Constitution guarantees their rights. Is he going to be keen to ensure that their constitutional rights are upheld as much as other constitutional rights are given the recognition and the protection that they deserve? Fortunately for me, and it may not make sense to you except you are a Christian, from as far back as 2004, there was a crusade in Mafikeng at the Civic Center. A man by the name Richard Gray came from Pietermaritzburg. He's still alive. I went to see him the other day. He's young. Called me and said, "You are a judge, aren't you?" I said, "Yes." And he said, "The Lord says you're going to be the Chief Justice of South Africa." 2004 already. I laughed it off. But the more I fasted and prayed, the more I got confirmation of this prophecy from many other men of God, from London, Ghana, Nigeria, Washington, D.C. It really became so real that I had to regularly go on a fast just to retest the veracity and the authenticity of the prophecy. A week before I was actually nominated, one man of God, Apostle Elvis Achiambo, sent me an email and said, my wife and I were praying this morning. The Lord says you are about to be elevated. So when the storm came, I had the benefit of the 2009 baptism of fire that went a long way towards helping me develop what is ordinarily or loosely referred to as the thick skin. I had tapped into the extraordinary capacity I never knew I had to withstand the worst of challenges. But more importantly, as the storm gained momentum, from Monday to Wednesday, I would go on a dry fast. I wouldn't take water, I wouldn't take food, 24 hours. Obviously based on the kind of scriptures that you need when you're involved in a spiritual warfare. And that stood me in good stead. Additionally, I think a week or so before the actual interview, God used the same man of God to give a message, and I've got them all in the emails, to say relax and be calm, for a miracle is about to hit you. So I went there restfully in command of the situation. We were enjoying the kind of peace that doesn't make sense, my wife and I, and all my children. So we saw it more as an opportunity to demonstrate that God is very much alive, and if you're faithful and surrendered to Him, and if it is not an ambition that you are pursuing, but a God-given vision that you are pursuing, He will protect you, irrespective of how many millions happen to be opposed to your nomination or appointment based either on their logic or the desire to further self-interest, sectoral interest, or just sheer opposition to the very Christian faith that you happen to subscribe.
So would you say these prophecies helped you prepare you for the storm that came?
Absolutely. The baptism of fire in 2009 and the inner assurance that, this is not something that I went out of my way looking for in pursuit of an ambition or a selfish interest. This is what God wants me to do. That is why, in the course of the interview, which, as you know, was live, when I was asked, well, we heard from one of your colleagues that you say the Lord wants you to be Chief Justice, which people continue to make mockery of to date. I had no hesitation in saying, as a matter of fact, it is so. Additionally, if you look at my response to the allegations that were leveled against me, my written response, I quote from the Bible because I was sure that I was doing or pursuing the will of God. And that is why, notwithstanding the intensity of the opposition, not just from the country, but from all over the world, the prophecy of God, who never lies, prevailed.
Amen. And we were shocked by some of the common comments in the newspaper. Some people that call themselves constitutional experts, even went as far as saying that Christians should not hold the job of Chief Justice. And a couple of other commentators then responded to that and said, well, when Chief Justice Muhammad was appointed to the bench, there was no outcry, even though he was a Muslim. When there was a Jewish man appointed to the bench, there was no outcry. Are we saying in South Africa that if you're a Christian and hold Christian views, that you are exempted from any high office in South Africa?
Well, that seemed to be the impression sought to be created by some of the commentators. But from where I sit, appreciating the critical importance that our Constitution has to play in ordering the affairs of the South African nation, I think anybody, even those who do not believe in anything, as long as they have what it takes to serve the nation well, as opposed to serving or furthering their own interest, ought to be afforded the opportunity to serve, even at the level of Chief Justice or President. That's in the nature of our constitutional order. And we cannot have a situation where our Constitution provides for the recognition or entrenches the people's constitutional right to believe in whatever they choose to believe in, and yet single out some other faiths for exclusion. It cannot be.
Next up, Leanne Pillay speaks to Olympic gold medalist Chad Le Clos about the release of his new book.
Chad, as South Africa's golden boy of swimming, what role has your family played in your phenomenal success?
Firstly, thanks for having us on the show. I can honestly say I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for my family. I think the number one rule is, for all parents is, you got to be there from the start for your kids, and that's what my dad, my mom, and everyone has always been there to support me, right from the beginning when I was swimming in those small garters, playing soccer. It doesn't matter whether it's sports, cultural, or academic activities, you have to be there, and I think that's something that stuck with me. So,
Bert, with a world-class champion as a son, being a dad and a father to him, why do you believe he's a good role model to the youth, to young South Africans?
Look. At the end of the day, I have 4 children, and they all have different roles to play. It's not you don't paint everyone the same brush, and you don't treat all your children the same. Because for me, I treat Chad possibly the worst, because he doesn't need me. He's number 1 in the world. My other kids, well, they need me more than he does. And I was once asked a question on BBC. Chad was asked the question, what does your dad do when you lose? Is he so overwhelming, he's so overpowering? And he was asked, he answered the first, and then I answered after that. And I turned around and said, well, when he loses, that's the time he needs me. Not when he's in front, when everything's going well. It's when things are bad in life. That's when you need people, you need your family around you. When you're number 1 in the world and everything's going well, you're getting gold medals, who needs his father?
Okay. So for yourself, Chad, in terms of role models and people that you admire and look up to, who would be your personal role models? I know you also touch on that in your book.
There's been so many. If you're looking at leadership, obviously Nelson Mandela. What he's done to sporting heroes. Probably Muhammad Ali. I mentioned this in my book. I really admired the way he interacted with his fans, and he was the people's champion. Something that I like to call myself. My family, my dad again. He's a great role model to all fathers out there. What he's done. And I mean, even Terence Parkman, you know, he was a swimmer back in Sydney. He swam with us at Graham Hill. And you know, he was actually deaf, and he won a silver medal at the Olympics, and he was just so humble in the way he approached things in life, and it's inspiring to surround yourself with people like that.
Yes, yeah. To live and be a good example as they have been.
100%.
Your book, you have dedicated it to the youth of South Africa. Is there, what's the message that you are wanting to bring across to them?
Well, there's several messages I'd like to bring across. I think the biggest one would be never to give up on your dreams, never to let anybody tell you can't do something. I mean, when I was quite young, I mentioned in my book, there was a certain swimmer, obviously not going to mention names, that told me I should just quit now, I'm not going to make it, especially as a butterfly swimmer. And if I listened to him, I wouldn't be here today. So, you know, you have to be able to take criticism, you have to believe in yourself when others don't. I think it's, you know, you're chasing a dream that probably nobody else sees but you. So that's what my short story is about, and you know, just about everything, just about believing and yeah.
So also, you know, you find a lot of people they sort of put you in a category because the child is a little bit overweight or this or that or not so good. It's easy, you know, when like I said, when everything is going well. You know, or you've got the perfect child. You know, you've got the perfect little Chad Le Clos or whatever. You know, it's not a perfect world, and not you, not Chad Le Clos perfect. You know, and this is the problem, especially with parents, because maybe they've got a good swimmer or a good rugby player or whatever. You know, they tend to hero worship their son. Love your child. Don't be in love with them. You know what I mean? Well, there's a gold medal. God gave him the gift to swim well. Look, he earned it. God never gave him the gold medal, you know, that's for sure. But he did what, with his gifts, he's done something with them. You know, I don't know what you did with your gifts or what I did with mine. You know, you know what I mean.
That's the important thing is we have been blessed with gifts and talents, and especially when it's such an incredible gift. One of the things that we should be doing is giving back in the way that we live, even though it's a weighty responsibility. It's a responsibility to be that example to other people.
I mean, you have to. I mean, something that I really want to do in the near future is open, probably after 2016, is open the Chad Le Clos Foundation, where you can give, where our family will give back, and just basically it's a growing problem in South Africa, you know, kids being water safe. So just to throw that out there.
All right, so from what I've learned, many of our country's top swimmers generally leave South Africa to go and train and be based abroad, but not you. Why is that?
Well, there's a few reasons. Well, firstly, my coach, you know, he's here in South Africa, Graham Hill. I've been with him now for nearly 15 years. And, you know, we don't change, as the old saying, you know, change a winning formula. And, you know, we've been doing really well for a long time, and, you know, there's no need for us to change that. And also, I believe that the grass isn't always greener on the other side. We've proved that we can do it by beating the best of all time.
We're a little country on this end of the continent, of the globe, and yet we compete with all these mega countries.
You know, I was just a kid that had a dream that wanted to race my idol. And who would have thought that I'd beat him, you know, 8 years later.
Yeah, but if you go back to what he said now about the grass being greener the other side, if it is greener, you know why. It's full of all the dung, you know. You think, oh, you've got such big problems, until you see the next person. You know, some very good-looking people, they say, oh, I'm not going out because I've got a pimple on my face. And then you see a guy who's got no arms and no legs. And he's smiling, you know.
Okay, so back to your book. There's a part that I understand was very sensitive. It was a time in 2010, you were doing really well, excelling at Youth Olympics and the Commonwealth Games. But on the home front, it wasn't that easy. Your mom was diagnosed with breast cancer. How did that affect you?
Well, obviously it was a very difficult time for us. They actually never told me about it until after the Nationals. I mean, I think my dad can reiterate on that. I was swimming the Commonwealth Games child. It was actually on my birthday, and they found out a week before, and I knew something was up. You know when you know.
You sense it.
Exactly. And when they told me afterwards, it was a big shock to me and to everybody. So 2010 in many ways was obviously the most difficult year for me, in and out the pool. I think, yeah, you know, huge credit to my mom for fighting through. she's incredible spirit.
Yeah. I think with your family standing together and being strong together, that was the support that you had to push through. And Bert, you, as far as I understand, you went with your wife to chemo every session. You entertained a lot of the patients with your jokes and served them coffee.
Look, you know, while we were there, one guy dropped his mother off, and she was crying. And he said, and he was like obviously a very rich guy, and he said she had done chemo before, and she said, oh, you know, she's scared and all that. And he said, he just ignored his old lady, and he said to this, the nurse, and when do I pick her up? I'll be back here at 11 o'clock. This was at 7, 8 o'clock in the morning. I went up to her in front of him. I said, don't worry about him. What can I get you a cup of tea? This and this and this. Oh no, and then anyway, she said, oh, don't. Then the one guy, I'll give you another story. The one guy, he said, I offered him a cup of tea or a coffee. No thanks. So he was like, well, I don't blame him. Anyway, eventually he said to me, all right, I forced him to have a cup of coffee. He says, one teaspoon of sugar. I said, no, you're a little bit miserable too. I'll give you 2. After that, it was plain sailing. I'd won him over, and you know, it made good of a bad situation. And the same applies. Everybody makes excuses. It's you know, we don't want to go into politics, but it's true all over the world. They blame this one for what's happening here. You know, you get in love because your father did that to you. You do that to other people. You know, you see all these terrible people in the world. They go from the court and they say, "Oh, I'm abusing because I was abused." That's absolute nonsense. You know what? The things that my father didn't do, the things that he did good for me, I carried through to my children. The little things, we're not perfect, none of us are. The things that he didn't do good, like, you know, because of the situation, he didn't come to see me play sport, so I make sure that I see my son play sport. So this nonsense of blaming the previous, you know, what happened to you, that's absolute nonsense.
Yeah. There are many people that have overcome their challenges and succeeded in life, and if they can do it, why can't we?
Exactly.
And those are the examples that we need to be looking to and using that in our own lives personally. In the book, you also give advice to parents, and perhaps you can elaborate a little bit about that, specifically to fathers, the role that you've played with your children, in raising them, disciplining them.
You know, there's not. You know, you must do as I say, don't do as I do. You understand what I'm saying? You know, I've done everything wrong in my life. And like I said, I know I was given gifts, I never used them in every way. So I tried to just change the pattern a little bit, you know. You know, when I was young, you know, I'm 56 now. When I was young, when I was young, when I was at school, it was cool to do bad. You know what I mean? It was cool. It was cool not to be good at school. Now it's, you know, you're proud of your schools. And it's, you know, I got 4 A's or 3 A's. You hear it all the time. So life has changed a little bit, you know, and you've got to move a little bit with the times. And because you're a rugby player, that doesn't really say your son's got to be a rugby player.
Yeah.
He could be a chess player or whatever, you know what I mean?
Give them the room to grow into who they were created to be and what they're supposed to be doing in life, and encourage them in it. Yeah, great. All right, last couple of questions. About a month ago, we interviewed your writer, Myan Brian, not about the book, but about his mission to bring hope to South Africa and South Africans. How did you find it working with him?
Mine was fantastic in the year and a bit that we've known him. Many hours together, obviously. Many retakes, and it's definitely worth it. You know, you put a lot of heart into it, so did we. So we're very happy with the way things have gone.
Well,
so, yeah.
Well, I got an email 3 days ago from a lady in Richards Bay, and her son is 11 years old, and he's read they bought the book, whatever. He's played all the sports, and reading the book, he says 3/4 way through, read.
Yeah.
And you know, and she turned around and in the email saying how fantastic it's written. Sure. And I've only had up to now positive feedback. Obviously there will be some skeptics, what do you call it? But
that always see the
you know, you always see half empty, you know, instead of half full, or full, you know, half full. But look, at the end of the day, it's mostly positive. And I actually complimented him this morning, saying that, and he said, well, you know, thanks very much. And then, of course, he spoke to me for another hour, you know. Because you can talk,
like
Sure.
He does, he
Yeah.
does. I've experienced that too.
Yeah.
But he's got good things to say, at least.
Very good.
Yeah, no, he's a good guy.
Okay, so then to close off, can I ask you this? We've recently just gone through elections. Everyone's voted. South Africans, I mean, there's varied opinions in terms of this country and government and whatnot. What's a message that you would love to encourage our fellow South Africans with? What would you say to them?
Want to start?
Well, I don't really know, you know. What you said was, I'm not politically minded, you know. I don't understand politics, you know. You know, I follow my nose, really, you know. I follow my instincts. I don't know what to say, you know. Whichever government rules, I don't care. It's the people I care about, you know. Yeah. And stop blaming each other. Don't blame this one for that one. Like I said earlier, this is the problem. They blame. You know, you do something wrong, you blame apartheid. I do something wrong, I blame the ANC, and so on and so on and so on. It's not about New South Africa, old South Africa. It's one South Africa now, and you know, it's going forward. That's how we're out the dark ages. When it was the apartheid era, we would never have a gold medal because we went to the Olympics. Sure. So you know, but go forward. Don't stop blaming the old and the new, you know.
Instead of, like you said, instead of making excuses, rather be the solution. Rather find a solution.
People like you said, like my dad says, is someone worse off than you.
Oh, and I promise you, it's worst of all that with the world. Everybody's got problems.
So yeah, never let it stop us, right?
Yes, of course.
Good. Well, thank you so much for joining us on the show. I really appreciate that you came and chatted to us and gave us some insight in terms of both of you, your life, your family, the book. I pray that it's a blessed launch and that it just has absolute success as people read it, and that it does touch South Africans' lives and they see that the message that you're trying to bring across. So
thank you.
I wish you all the success.
Thanks very much. Thank you, eh?
That's our show for tonight. I hope you enjoyed it. Please remember to go to our website, familypolicyinstitute.com, click on the subscribe button and fill in your information. Once you submit that, you will receive our weekly newsletter, Watchmen on the Wall. You can also follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Remember, the latest edition of Joy magazine is available at retail stores across the country. Make sure you get your copy. Thank you for joining us tonight. God bless you, and remember to keep standing.